So sous vide is one of the most amazing techniques when it comes to cooking steak. I mean, it slowly cooks the steak in a pressurized environment, breaks down all the connective tissues, preserves a beautiful color all the way through. Well, in this video, I'm gonna show you how to make a sous vide steak from start to finish. We're gonna do a filet mignon. I'm gonna show you how to prepare it, how to vacuum seal it, talk about seasoning, thickness, temperatures. In the end, we're gonna cook one in a pan. When it's all done, crack it open, and you're gonna be able to see just how beautiful these steaks come out. All right, so let's get started. Let's talk about what we need to get this done. Now, first thing we need is a cryovac machine and a vacuum sealer or a food saver. You can find these at the store for $150, super easy to use. They're really great, not just for sous vide cooking, but for marinating meats, for preserving food. They're gonna replace the Tupperware someday, because what they do is they take this bag and they create a seal and they heat lock it after vacuuming all the air out of it. Really incredible, really fantastic. I'm gonna show you on the filet how this works. The next tool we're gonna need is what's called an immersion circulator. And an immersion circulator keeps water moving at a precise temperature. And these are available easily on Amazon, at certain stores. You can find these for about $80 to $100. This one's a little more expensive, but you know, the Innova ones are great. No, this isn't sponsored by it, but the Innova ones are fantastic. You can control them from an app on your phone, and they're super accurate, and they work in containers about this size. If you're going bigger, you need to get bigger or have multiple immersion circulators in there. A clip. Now, I just use a standard binder clip from Staples. This is gonna really work well to keep the bag locked in there so it's not floating all over the place. And then you need the items that you're gonna be sous videing. So today we're sous videing a filet mignon, and this is a nice thick filet. This is choice grade. It's got some beautiful marbling on it, but I don't really normally go above choice for fillets, especially when I'm sous videing them, because this is gonna become so tender as it cooks. So what are we looking for when we're doing this? We're gonna season our steak first, and I just normally use salt. Basically, if you use other spices when you get into sous videing steaks, as it cooks, and it's gonna cook in its own juices in this vacuum sealed environment, other fragrances and flavors can kind of really overwhelm the steak. So oftentimes I'll just use salt on the meat, a little pat of butter, and a sprig of fresh rosemary or something. But for this steak, we're just gonna use salt and butter so we can get the purest form of just a sous vide steak. So different from cooking a steak on a grill or a broiler, we're gonna use a little bit less salt. And that's because this is gonna actually cook in its own juices, so it's gonna kind of lock in a lot of that sodium, and it's gonna take on a lot of the flavor from the salt. We wanna put the steak into the bag. I like to get it as low down to the bottom as possible, and I'm gonna throw a little pat of butter. And you can see this is maybe 3/4 of a tablespoon. It's not much, but I'm also only doing one steak. But if you think about it, when everything's compressed together, that is a lot of butter in there. If we were just doing this in a Ziploc bag, which we could do, and I'll do another video on it in the future, you can use a little more butter if you want, but for this works absolutely perfect. So I'm gonna take the bag and put it in the machine to seal it. And each machine is different with the way it works. So now you can see this is a nice airtight package. It created a heat seal on the top. There's no oxygen inside, or very little. And that's gonna really help us as we cook it, because this pressure, sous vide under pressure, is really gonna help. And putting it in the water bath is gonna surround this even more in pressure. Now, when we go into the water bath, this is when things get really cool. So as I put this into the water bath, now the next step is I wanna make sure it stays underwater and submerged, because it's gonna float around, it's moving water. So we're gonna use our clip to clip this down. And what that's gonna do is actually keep the bag in one secured spot. Now you'll see the water's kind of moving around it, but it's staying down below. Now I chose a temperature of 134 degrees, and 134 degrees will get us to that really nice medium point that we're looking for. I'll put down below in the comments a bunch of different temperatures and times and everything you need to know to be able to get you to that perfect temperature you're looking for cooking. But because of the thickness of this steak, this is gonna sit in here for about an hour. And that's gonna give it enough time to slowly cook and slowly bring it to temperature. And afterwards, we're gonna finish it in a pan. I normally do 1 inch per hour when I'm sous videing steaks, because it's kind of my go-to thought process of how long it takes for the heat to penetrate all the way through. Now what's happening here, which is really cool, is in this slow process where it's breaking it down and it's slowly taking its time to cook, It is breaking down all the connective tissues, but it's preserving the quality of the muscle fibers, and it's softening the fat versus doing it on a grill or something like that where you're going to char that fat and melt it quickly. The fat's going to be maintained in here, and it's just going to get much softer and more delicate, and it's going to eat much better. All right, so our steak has been in here for a little over an hour. We're at 134 degrees consistently. Let's take this thing out. We're going to sear it up in a pan, cut it open, and see what it looks like. So you can see when we take it out, there's a little bit of liquid in the bag, and that comes from the steak cooking, also from the butter that we have in there. Now this liquid's great. There's really nothing we're going to do with it for this process, but we're going to take the steak out of the bag right now and look at it. So immediately when it comes out, you're going to notice it's got kind of a grayish, brownish color. It doesn't look very appetizing, right? That's because that's all the part that's been touching the hottest part of the water. Now, when we cut into this on the inside, it's going to be an even, beautiful pink all the way through. But the first thing we want to do is get it in a pan and get a nice golden brown color on it. And we're going to finish it with a butter base. So let's get started. So the first thing I like to do is I like to dry it off a little bit. And that's just because it's got all these juices, and a little bit drier means less water that has to steam out. That means it's going to caramelize a lot faster. So I just give it a little pat with a paper towel. Now over here, I have a pan that I've heated over a medium-high heat. I'm looking for that 320 to 350 kind of range of heat. If I'm doing it on an open burner, I'm going to go medium-high in the setting and allow the pan to properly heat up. I'm going to add just a touch of oil to glaze the bottom of the pan. I don't want a heavy pool of oil because we're going to add butter to this as well. Adding too much oil is going to be counterproductive, and it's going to actually kind of deep fry the steak instead of getting that really amazing char. Now I know we went a little bit light on the seasoning, so I'm going to add a touch more on top of the steak. But I will tell you that that steak is penetrated all the way through with salt flavor, which is absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to take the steak and put it right into the pan. So what's happening at this point is that oil is starting to dry the steak out and release some steam. What's going to happen next is the caramelization, where the juices and the bloods inside the steak start to caramelize, and we're going to add some butter to help kind of move that along and toast some of the butter fats and actually add more nuttiness and more caramel to this steak. So once I start to see a little bit of color around the sides of the steak, I'm going to take some butter and add it right into the pan. Now if you've seen my 10 tips for cooking the perfect steak video, you'll see this technique, the butter basting technique. I use it a lot of times when I cook steak because it's fantastic. It gives a great crust and an amazing, amazing nutty flavor to the steak. So once I see my butter start to foam and start to get some brown in there and some nuttiness, I'm going to take my spoon and actually baste the top of the steak with this hot butter. So what this is doing is drying out the side of the steak that's up on top that we're going to flip over and continue to char and sear. Now once I've gotten what I feel is a pretty good sear on one side, I'm going to flip the steak over, allow it to start charring on the other side, but still toss butter, because the butter is going to continue to give more color to that side we've already charred. And it's also going to add color to the sides of the steak as well. So I continue to just throw the hot butter over the steak and allow this brown butter to kind of baste the steak and work its way through to infuse some flavor and bring out some caramelization. So now that our steak has a nice sear, we're going to take it out of the pan and put it on the cutting board. We do want to still rest this, but because of sous vide, you don't have to rest it for as long as you would a broiled steak, because the proteins and the muscle fibers aren't very tight right now. They were cooked at a gentle temperature, so they're already soft, and they've absorbed a lot of the juices inside already. But I still like to let it rest for 1, maybe 2 minutes before I cut into it. So let's cut into this. It's been resting for about 2 minutes, and I am dying to show you what it looks like on the inside. The outside has a beautiful char, and it looks great. It looks like it's fresh out of a skillet. But the inside is absolutely perfect. I mean, that is a textbook, beautiful, even medium all the way through. It's gorgeous, and you can see it still has the ring from where we charred it, that little bit of gray area around, which we're looking for because that gives you a difference in textures and a difference in flavors. But this steak looks absolutely incredible. I can't wait to dive into it. The coolest thing about sous vide, and the thing I love the most, is how the color is even and the temperature is even all the way through, with the exception of the area that you seared with the butter basting. Now, as you bite into this, it's going to be very soft and very succulent. If we cut into it, you'll see that that color is even all the way through. Versus when you cook a steak on a broiler, your thinner part of the steak is a little more overcooked, but in this, the medius middle part and the end are both pretty evenly pink. So any steak that you sous vide, if it has a big cap of fat on it, like a brisket or a New York strip, a ribeye, after you sous vide it and then sear it, that fat is very creamy and succulent and delicious. Versus if you do it on a broiler and it gets kind of gristly and chewy, this is just absolutely fantastic. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like what you see here, hit the like button, the subscribe button, click the bell for notifications so you get alerted when new videos come out, because I got tons of great cooking videos. There's great content on the channel, so much more coming out. If you like cooking scallops, check out this video on how to cook scallops, the 10 tips on how to cook steak, tons of great stuff. So thank you. I hope you try this method at home and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Cook on.